a lot of people don't realize as well that promoters are responsible for riders. And over the riders, they've got a little more exotic as the years have gone by, haven't they? There's a great story about Prince who was keen on flowers, I believe.
You know, I like to think at first I was very kind of weirded out by some of those riders, but then after a while you anticipate them, and you probably worked with a lot of the groups at one point or another, so you're ready for them. As long as you've budgeted for pretty much anything that they're going to ask for, and they're very happy to send you the riders in advance now, rather than the old days. You'd get a contract in the rider a week before the show, and nobody's ever discussed any of the stuff that's in there, and suddenly you're put to the walls to provide all this stuff, whether the show's doing well or not. Nowadays, I mean, you're prepared for that. That's what I was talking about in terms of, you know, how things were so much different in the 70s, for example, compared to today. It's a real business as far as the mechanics of how these operations work. It's big money. There's accountants and there's people that count the beans. And, you know, I mean, if somebody was like in Prince's case, he asked for a room full of Danish flowers or from Holland or whatever they were, and he wants these white flowers and they cost $10,000. He's paying for them.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So if your guest, if you're throwing a party and the entertainer for your guest is coming in, he wants a certain kind of vodka or a certain champagne, or he wants to have a dressing room, he wants to use your bedroom to clean up before he goes on and performs for your house guest. You know, you're inviting somebody into your home basically. And for the most part, people don't abuse it, make you go out of your way and drive you crazy, asking for all crazy things just to see if you'll do it. In this case nowadays, I'll tell them, you know, when I see that rider, I'll say I won't provide this or I won't provide that. I don't like buying cigarettes for people. I don't like buying condoms for people. I don't, you know, I just don't like overdoing things. But if it's something that's going to make them comfortable while they're visiting with us and they really need it, and they're going to end up paying for it sooner or later anyway. And if it's ridiculous, of course, we'll have a conversation about it. Some people still come in, very rarely though, with, you know, liquor riders that are a few $1,000s. And it's like, come on, are we here to get drunk or are we here to do a show? Well, can't we do both? Hello.
Well, actually, what I've found with working with bands, a lot of the time, the bands don't touch the rider. It's the guests who come along and help themselves. The band may have a drink a piece here or there, but it's generally the rider. I've seen so many riders that usually end up being taken away on the tour bus afterwards.
Well, yeah, and they take a lot of them, the smart ones, take everything with them on the buses afterwards. But again, if you bought the show right and the right amount of people show up, you're basically doing some shopping for your guests is what you're doing. And I don't do it personally. I mean, there's people that have jobs that do that kind of stuff, and there's a budget provided to them to do it. So, yeah, you know, I mean, it's like anything else. The next time you go to somebody's house, you know, and they go, hey, do you need anything? And you tell them what would make you comfortable. Let's call it your rider. Send your rider ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, most of these bands will have started. I mean, the Beatles we mentioned, they came straight in America doing the big gigs, but a lot of bands would have started in the clubs or the small theaters, and the rider then would have been tea, coffee, a few soft drinks, a couple of beers, and that's it. And the bigger that you get, then the bigger, the more exotic and the more interesting the rider becomes. And I'm going to say two words here: cheeseboard and Queen. Now, well, tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, it's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Like, here I am, a lowly American, and the English gods send over a rider, and it says they want a cheese tray. Well, you know, you provide a cheese tray for the dressing room. Now, this is maybe almost 40 years ago, and I'm a kid in my mid-20s. so I've never, I don't know what a charcuterie board is, you know, and that's, you know, that's like a real fancy cheese tray. It's got meats and olives and peppers and little toast points and little crackers and all kinds of beautiful cheese. And my guy, also an American caterer from the building at the time, he provided, it was just like a metal tray, and it had like 20 slabs of cheese on it, you know, like he peeled them out of the Velveeta wrapper or something. And that was it. And so the manager, the road manager, his name's Jerry Stickles. Just a delightful guy. He used to be Jimi Hendrix's guitar roadie. And he comes, he goes, Danny, what you see there, what is that? I go, that's your cheese tray. He goes, no, it's a tray filled with cheese, isn't it? I want a cheese tray, don't I? I go, I guess you do. And so I went to the guy and I said, let's blow it out. I mean, he goes, I got everything. So he comes back with the Stilton and the Gruyere and the Camembert. And he's got chunks of beautiful Parmesan. He's got bread, French bread, crackers. He had sparklers stuck in this thing. I mean, it was beautiful. It was like the 4th of July. We come wheeling 5 carts and we line them up next to each other and they look like one. And it's just the most beautiful orgy of cheese you've ever, and meats, slices of stuff, and wine and sparkling water. I mean, he goes, now that's a cheese tray. And the band loved it. They were so giddy. And then Billy Squire goes on stage and he's doing this great set, and he comes off. I see the band before they go on. Hey, thanks, mate. We'll see you next time. Because they're going to run right off stage after the show and leave. So they go on stage, and after a couple songs, Jerry comes. He goes, come on back here a minute. Takes me back to that same dressing room. And the cheese tray is all over the walls. It's in the bathroom. It's everywhere. And he hands me a stack of money. He goes, this should cover the cleanup and then some. So I gave it to the cleaning crew, and there was then some. They gave me $2,000. It didn't cost $2,000 to clean it, but he was embarrassed about their childish behavior. And, you know, when you, I mean, you're queen and you got the money and you're going to blow money on cleaning up. And I'm sitting there going, this is why I had to charge an extra $1 for a ticket, or this is why I had to, you know, and the answer is yes. It's part of it. It's what happens.
Do you know what I always say, though, having worked very closely with a lot of musicians over the years, and I love doing that. It's very, for me, I'm very comfortable in that environment and everything else. But I always say most musicians are like 5-year-old children. If they can't get their own way, they make the same noise a 5-year-old makes when he can't get his own way. And you know, you can't smack their bottom and send them to bed. They probably enjoy that, but that's it. And it's like, it's that whiny, oh, it's not what I want. And you think, okay, well, tell me what you do want, and they can't.
Well, you know, I would agree with that earlier on in the history of rock, in the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s. But you know, somewhere around the time of when the 2000s started, which is already 20 years, this has turned into a business. And if you're a real pain in the ass, people might not book you. And if it's public that you're a real pain, people might not come see you, because suddenly it's like, I don't want to pay to see that brat. You know, I found that over the years, there has been a roadmap provided by the fact that this has been going on 50 years now. And it's a different game than it was. People don't want to work for goofy people, and people don't respect them. And when people act out, I mean, like newer bands that haven't been around the block very much, I expect them to go crazy. I expect them to have a lot of fun. I hope they have a lot of fun, because when you're 20, 30 years old, where your heart can take all this nonsense, that's when you want to get it out of your system. Because sooner or later, guys, girls, you're going to turn 30, 35, you're going to have a family, and suddenly all that's going to be out the window, but you'll have those great memories. But the bottom line is, don't continue. Slow
Well,
down.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
and
your book's full of these great stories, and again, what comes through is the amount of fun you've had doing these things, and it's almost like a dream come true for you, because you're very passionate about what you do. That's the main thing. It's a job, and you take it as a job. You take that very seriously. It's a responsibility, which is quite unusual in the music business, because previous to all of that, you get in the music business, it's the most irresponsible industry you could ever get into. There's a responsibility about it now, purely because there is a big business there, but you still have fun, and you still make sure the audience go away going, wow, that was great. And the band went, that was great. We're going to come here again. We'd like to use you next year, you know?
right.
And I think that's an important part of your job. And that comes across in the book.
That's the, it's a real special place to be at any time, you know, being the presenter of a show, and then actually getting lucky enough or fortunate enough that it becomes your life's work and your business. And you want to protect that, and you want to stay there. And you know, along the way, you learn what works for you in your area or your shows, your style of doing things, or you don't. And if you don't learn, you're going to make mistakes, or people aren't going to like you, and they're going to move on to somebody else that they prefer to work with. I kind of take it personally when somebody that I've worked with before doesn't want to work with me again, even if it's over money. And that's usually what it's about. I've had very few rows with anybody to the point where I couldn't work with them again.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say there's been a few, I'll say that, but not many. You're not going to get along with everybody. You're not going to be friends with everybody, but you can certainly try. And for the most part, most people aren't requiring friendship from you, but they're requiring, you know, professionalism, and you got a good staff, and you got good people, and you're where you're supposed to be, and you're providing what you need to provide to make that show come off at 8 o'clock. And if you don't, you get railed out. You're gone. You know, it's like that in any business. And you know, that as I was writing this book and I was getting towards the end of it, because I had to write an ending, which is difficult to write because it's not the end of the story. I'm still doing this, but I wanted to like leave people with something, which is basically, look what I did. You know, I got this because I wanted it. I dug it. I loved it. I tried really hard. I didn't give up, even though I wanted to a lot of times. You're only human. You can only take so much rejection. But once it started, and I had a couple of bumps along the way, but I found my legs, and the 80s were magic. The 90s were magic. At the beginning of the 2000s, I sold the company that I built up for many years. And I continue to do this, you know, to this day on my own. And I'm very proud of it, and I'm very happy about it. I mean, I'm very fortunate that everything worked out the way that is. I get to talk about a book with people on the other side of the world, which is terrific. And I hope it interests other people enough to go over to Amazon and pick up a copy, because not just because it was mine, but, you know, when I was writing it, I was careful. I was trying not to make it personal about my life and all the other stuff, because nobody knows who the hell I am. But they'll know who I am as the conduit from these great names to the experience of the music business, and going to these shows and the history that these people, their lives that they've shared with us. You know, prior to the end of the 80s, when cell phones came into existence, we were the guys that ran off the airplanes to that bank of payphones when we were traveling. And we were the guys that like made fax machines hugely popular when they first came out, because we didn't have to sit there and roll over all these numbers on the phone with the agents all the time. I mean, we've seen progress in our business unlike anybody else. Remember, the Beatles quit playing live because they couldn't hear themselves on stage. Now they have in-ear monitors. If the Beatles had in-ear monitors, they'd still be performing.
Yeah.
Or
I guess.
would have been.
Well, you know, your book is a fascinating read, and I think obviously a lot of people will be attracted because of the people you've worked with, and that's great. But I think you come across really well in this book, and
Good.
you know, it's about you, but it isn't about you, and it's the way you reacted to people and how you came through it, and you are still here. The story isn't over. So I would highly recommend people go to amazon.co.uk, look it up in the book section and buy this book, and then you can see how it really works. And it's another facet that really hasn't been talked about a lot, and you've really put it into words what it's all about. And thank you for that. It's a wonderful book.
I really appreciate that. I mean, you know, I wrote it so I could hear that. It's very important.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, everybody's got a book in them, and your book has come out top of the pile for that, because it's a very unusual book. It's got the edge because there's not many books in that particular room concerning what you do for a living, and it's great. It's really good.
The thing that you know, I do things unconventionally a lot, and especially with the book, when I had to make the decision, like, am I going to do a few pages of photos, you know, and when you see what I did, the answer was no, resounding no, because you can't take those pictures and cram them all together and then have more talking and then more pictures. Those pictures really, really help tell that story. Although, you know, by including all the pictures in with the words, poor Tandra in my office, she had to edit this thing, and it took her a long time, because these programs that they use for writing books and putting together, they're not very forgiving. You move something, I mean a hair, and it could shove everything off the page. So it took a long time for that. But, you know, the main thing is I just had to make a decision, and I think I did the right one when it was like, all right, let's spend extra money on having the pictures help tell the story in the stories, rather than make people go on a hunting mission to find a shot, you know, to go along with what the story was earlier or later in the book.
Well, as Rod Stewart once said, every picture tells a story, and your book is full of great photographs. The book is available now.
The best part of it was doing the captions underneath the pictures.
Yes, well, they do. Everyone, some of them write themselves. The book is available now on amazon.co.uk in the UK, and certainly amazon.com in America. It's called Exce, all areas. I love to play on words with that. It's wonderful, because everyone would think of promotion would put access all areas, and I love the access.
Just so your listeners know, the actual working title is All Excess.
All Excess. Okay, I mean,
Excess.
All Excess. The book is called All Excess. It's written by Danny Zelisko, who you've had a wonderful life, and you're still working in the industry, and it's wonderful. You're still adding to those memories, not just for yourself, but for other people, which is a great way to live your life.
And this too shall continue. I'm very anxious to get back to getting the shows up and out there, and I'm happy to have done this book in the meantime, but I'm ready to put on some shows.
Okay, we're all waiting, holding our breath almost for that. Danny, it's been great talking to you today. Thank you so much for that. The book is great. I urge people to go and buy it.
Thanks so much. I appreciate all your kind words.